Do you think that because it's fall, you're done gardening? Nah, think again. In fact, right now would be the best time to mix up some good old super soil. Stick around, I'm gonna show you how to do that. First thing you want to do is you want to get a tea brewer and brew up some good tea. That way after you mix it up, you can inoculate it. And what that means is you can just introduce the bacteria with tea that you've brewed up in one of my tea brewers. And I have another video on how to do that. But so just brew up some tea, that way when you mix it up you can just water it in, and I'll show you how to do that later. But I would get the tea brewing maybe 2 days before you're gonna mix up the soil. So maybe do it like after work on a Thursday or something and let it brew, and I will show you how to do that here. All right, now this is my tea brewer. I have it turned off right here, but as you can see, I just have aquarium heater. That's a 50 watt aquarium heater. That's a 200 watt aquarium heater. And then all this is just a PVC tea. And there's a pump. You could probably see it underneath there. Comes up, pumps water into this tea, forces it down, and I have them kind of angled so it creates a vortex and circulates the water constantly. And then of course these heaters are just there to maintain a nice warm temperature. And if you look, this line here is the air line, and I have a special fitting, and I will leave a link in the description for that, because I know that's probably something that you're wondering, what the hell is that? And how's he doing that? That comes up to this air pump, and then that in turn, as the water starts to come up through that pipe there, it in turn injects it with air and aerates the water. Right now, I haven't added anything to this. This is just water that I've let brew and heat up. And I do that, and I also add a little bit of vitamin C crystals. And that in turn just helps dechlorinate it. Now also when I fill out the bucket, I run it through just an RV water filter. And again, just doing that and the vitamin C crystals, letting it brew, kind of warms it up. That way when you do add the bacteria, it will in turn just cause a huge explosion of bacteria growth. Now for super soil mix and just kind of the initial inoculation, what I do, it's just your standard revitalize or your just biofungicide. And then I also do SLF 100. And that helps break down the amendments, because there's definitely going to be some time where I set it aside and cook it and let everything else. This product helps with that. It helps break everything down. So I would probably just add this in the brewer, let it run overnight. And so yeah, I'm going to show you here a clip of the brewer running after I add these two products. And another thing you could add would be, that's recharge. But you don't really brew that very long. You maybe add that, let it run for maybe an hour after these two products have been brewing overnight. So yeah, that's just kind of the 411 as far as how to inoculate super soil. So, and then after that, just get yourself some amendments. I'm gonna leave a link for all this stuff in the description. Now I'm gonna do a lot more than just the Dr. Earth. Really good fertilizer and the fish bone meal. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily be fish bone meal, but yeah. So I'm gonna show you all the amendments that I use. Okay, the first would be the alfalfa meal. That's just a standard, just kind of, it has a little nitrogen, a little bit of phosphorus, and a little bit of potassium, but it mainly has a growth stimulant called tricantanol. And what that is just kind of just a natural growth stimulant, and it really just helps the plants grow. A lot of people swear by it. You can buy it in small quantities, but if you get it at a feed store, like Tractor Supply, you can buy it in the big bags pretty cheap. Next up would probably be the kelp meal. That is just essentially dried seaweed. Awesome amendments, lots of growth hormones, not a lot of NPK, but a lot of just micro and trace element nutrients. Down below it, I've got some insect frass in a bucket. That is exactly what you think it is. It is insect shit. And what that does is it makes the plants, okay, it does have some NPK and some micronutrients, but it primarily makes the plants think that there's insects around and that they're under attack by insects. And that's going to in turn enhance their immune system. All of these would primarily, so far, would primarily go in, I'm going to make 2 batches. So there's going to be a veg mix and a flower mix. So the veg is going to be primarily high phosphorus fertilizers. And the flowering mix, or I'm sorry, I've got that backwards. But the veg mix is going to be your standard high nitrogen, and then your flour mix is going to be your high phosphorus. And speaking of phosphorus, I've got the fish bone meal. Just as it says on the box, it is 412.0. That is a 0. That's covering, well, the price tag covering it up. You could just use regular bone meal. I don't really see an advantage over the fish bone meal, other than the fish bone meal breaks down a little bit faster. Next up, and that's going to primarily be used in the flour mix, but you can use some of it in the veg mix too. It is beneficial for calcium, and it does have some nitrogen. See the 4 there. Next up is going to be the Azomite. Azomite is just, it actually is mined from a volcano and is a trace element, or it's like a volcanic ash, but it generally provides a lot of all your just standard micronutrients. So it has very much, as you can see, no NPK really, like a 0.2 of the potassium, but it's super rich in trace elements. Next up, I've got the bat guano. Now, that's good stuff. Make sure you get the kind that is responsibly harvested. I honestly don't know if this brand really is, but I will leave a link in the description for some that I know is. I know the Roots Organic kind is, so this is just kind of what I have laying around. This is a good high nitrogen guano. I also have the, let's see if I can get to it, the Seabird guano, which is the high phosphorus. Now they do also make high phosphorus bat guano. It really just depends on the bat's diet. Next up, oh, some more fishbone meal. This stuff right here, this crab and lobster shell, that, as you can see, it's got some nitrogen and phosphorus, but it also has chitin and a lot of calcium. As you can see, 17% calcium. So I'm definitely going to mix that in. You can use that either or, veg or flour. And it also has calcium, or chitin, as well as calcium. Really good stuff. And then, what else? This stuff right here. This is ground oyster shells. Now, if you're wondering why it's kind of in that bag like that, essentially what I did is I went to Tractor Supply and I got a big bag of chicken feed oyster shells and I ground them up into a powder like that. And that's a really good supplier of slow release calcium. It also, the shells, the chunks of it are porous, and it provides like a little home for bacteria and microorganisms to live. So that's kind of like a microbe house. Next up, we got the flowering Dr. Earth granular fertilizer. That's a good one. But as far as what I would use for that's going to be what I'm going to put on the flowering mix as well. See, it's a 374, so mostly phosphorus. They do make a high nitrogen version that I got some. And right here, I've got some Langbeinite. Langbeinite is just a really awesome to use amendment. And essentially what it is it gets you your potassium, it gives you your sulfur, and it gives you a lot of magnesium. Really awesome to help with just overall plant quality. It's really good to use towards the end of flower. And it will just bring out terpenes, help with just overall quality, the sulfur. And definitely helps with that. And last but not least, I've got the worm castings. That goes in either or veg or flour. And that's just awesome way of just adding microorganisms. I've got tons of stuff that does, so, but yeah, enough said. I'm gonna get started and I'm gonna show you how I mix this stuff up. This is just the standard setup I found that works the best. Just take a bale of Promax. I'm gonna open it up right now. Sounds like my gloves. And dump it out. Oh, yeah, first in that way. I'm using the high porosity Promax, that's what I recommend for just general use, anything other than seeds. So, scoop it up. Just kind of run it through the hardware cloth a little bit. That's going to help filter out some of the boogers and dingleberries. Well, once you get this tub pretty full, start adding the amendments and mixing it in, and then you just move it in a trash can. Dump that off like so. Not an exact science. It really isn't. Just kind of push it and work it through the this hardware cloth. I generally use 1/4 inch. That works pretty good as far as filtering out all the junk. All right. Now time for the amendments. Okay. I'm not gonna measure these because I'm just gonna eyeball out. An appropriate amount. Okay, that was the Dr. Earth. Now, time for the alfalfa pellets. It's totally fine if you get the pelleted alfalfa meal. Because as soon as it gets wet, they just fall apart. Okay. Next up, the bat guano. Ugh. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Langbeinite. Not a lot, because this is supposed to be a high nitrogen mix. Now it's time for the Azomite. Next up, fish bone meal. Get it out of this damaged box. Again, you don't have to use fish bone meal. You could use just regular. Kelp meal. It's almost like a dirt of the sea. And oyster shells, really good source of calcium. And last but not, or actually there's two more. Insect Frass. Get some good chitin going. Some more chitin. As far as crab meal, woo. And worm castings. And then you just mix this all in. Mix it all in. I'm going to add a little bit of tea. Looks like my my watering can's kind of messed up. But yeah, that should help keep the dust down. Kind of help inoculate it. So now you kind of have the idea of how I do the rest batch. I'm probably just going to time lapse through all the others, because I still got to mix up that big barrel, and then probably about a week or so. It kind of smells like, oh, kind of like a barn because of the alfalfa meal. But generally, when that smell goes away, and this is the other bit, and you see these little bits, they kind of break apart. That is actually the alfalfa pellets, and after a while, these will break down and release lots of nutrients and tricantanol in the soil. After about, I would say on average, you should probably let the soil cook maybe 30 days. You could probably get away with 20. Also, you can turn it, but there could be some, I don't know, maybe kind of a negative side to turning it. I don't know what the hell that is. And that is that you're disrupting all of the bacteria, but it's kind of like the whole no-till philosophy. But, you know, I'd say maybe turn it every week or so. But it's kind of hard to turn in these big trash cans. I guess if you're really wanting to do that, you could do it in a bin, kind of like what I have my cocoa in. And that'll help. But generally, I'll just take a shovel and just kind of mix that up, at least the top part. And yeah, definitely do it in the fall, because the longer it cooks, the better. I've often known that about soils, especially maybe after you've harvested your old potting mix. You would go get a bunch of amendments and fertilizers. Again, you don't have to use all of mine that I've used, but you know, and you can have your own, and there are certain benefits to using each one, like I just said. And insect frass is beneficial. You know, alfalfa meal, kelp meal, it's all beneficial. Bone meal, oyster shell, feather meal, good slow release nitrogen, bat guano, blood meal. I didn't put any blood meal in here. I didn't want to make it super nitrogen, but there's definitely some high nitrogen guano. I also top dress, and I water in some nutrients. So this is kind of a more of a slow release super soil as far as the nitrogen content. Oh, look, alfalfa booger. So yeah, but yeah, definitely leave a comment. I want to know if you have any questions about super soil.